Thank you very much, Hala, and it's wonderful to be here and to close this with you guys. I opened it up there. And this is my first Solve experience. I've never been here before. I'm an independent artist. And today I'm going to be sharing a visualization of 800,000 years of atmospheric CO2 data, which was shown to me by a NASA engineer, and telling you the story of how that started as a song and ended up as an installation and projection with the UN, Nobel Prize Summit, COP26, New York Times Climate Hub, and other climate spaces. So I am an artist. I tend to work very much across the disciplines. You know, anything from a music dementia research project working with neuroscientists through to a space broadcast using the Holmdel horn antenna and working with Dr. Robert Wilson, Nobel laureate. So the work is definitely not in one box or in one lane. And I never really understood that as a kid, that you had to pick something and then just stick with it. You know, through the education process, I was like, well, we're so much more multidimensional than we often think, and our brains are so much more able to run simultaneous things and not just focus on one thing. And I also feel that working between these fields actually helps to create bridges and bring people together and kind of cross-pollinate ideas in really amazing ways. So it's a short timer today, so 8 minutes. I'm going to tell you a bit about this project. This is one of the latest installations. And it began with me going to the cinema as a teenager in London with my best friend and watching An Inconvenient Truth. And like so many probably at the time saw it, I was horrified. You know, being also pretty young, I had no idea what I was watching, or I didn't know what the film was about, and it felt like it was some sort of spoof, you know, Hollywood disaster movie rather than a documentary with real, you know, facts and data as a portrait of where we are, or where we were on the planet at that point in time. So I left the cinema just so angry, and I went home and I wrote a song called From Green to Red, about what I'd seen, very much, you know, an environmental song. But then I thought, well, I never have to record this song because everyone's going to see this documentary. It will be on a completely different path in 5 or 10 years. And of course, that didn't happen. So that track ended up becoming part of the second record, which included a reimagining of the album jacket cut by the tailor who dressed Bowie, Hendrix, Jagger out of fabric which was woven with my music, which was recorded in the room where McCartney wrote Eleanor Rigby and Hendrix wrote The Wind Cries Mary. So yeah, the projects are all pretty layered and different. So doing these sorts of projects, you know, I ended up being at Bell Labs and working on something actually totally different. For those of you who don't know Bell Labs, I'm sure all of you know Bell Labs, but the transistor, the telephone, you know, incredibly brilliant engineers. And I ended up going into the world's quietest room, the anechoic chamber that they have there. And this was such a profound experience in terms of just feeling this silence that actually is meant to drive you mad. A lot of the engineers can't typically stay in there longer than 20 minutes, but I found it so peaceful. And it was like this ultimate reset. And I realized we have so much noise around us all the time, and not literal audio noise, but information noise. And so vital planet-saving messages, notifications, social media, music, journalism, everything is competing, everything is sitting in this same superficial sphere, and it's hitting us, and it's bombarding us. So just going into that chamber profoundly affected me. And it was through working with Bell Labs that I ended up meeting Dr. Robert Wilson, who used this incredible instrument, the Holmdel horn antenna, to pick up cosmic microwave radiation and prove the validity of the Big Bang Theory, which won him a Nobel Prize. And he had wanted to meet me. I'd wanted to meet him. So we ended up meeting in front of this horn antenna, which you can see. And I said, look, you've used this to receive, but have you ever used it to transmit? He's like, well, no. I'm like, well, I happen to have this record installation, anti-stream with Bell Labs called Raw Space. Maybe we could send it into space using this horn antenna. And he's like, no, because the sound waves will get to a point in the Earth's atmosphere and then they'll stop. And I thought that was the end of the conversation, and he goes away and I go away. And then I get an email from him a month later saying, Beatie, I figured it out. We can do an update on the horn, and we can send the record into space if you still want to do it. I don't know many people that would be like, no, I'm not interested anymore. So yeah, I meet him, and there are just a couple of us, and we do this very whimsical, incredibly joyful, fun experiment. And again, something like that, at the time, it felt so small and so intimate, but it's been something that's really resonated with people, bigger than it felt in the moment. So through that, directly, indirectly, I'm really condensing a lot of story just to get to the point, but I end up at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and they've asked if I'll give a talk to all their engineers about my work. So I'm giving a conversation, a lot of brilliant minds. And at the end of this conversation presentation, one of the chief engineers, Dr. Randy Wesson, comes up and shows me these atmospheric CO2 graphs dating back 800,000 years. He's like, look, I really feel you'll get something from seeing this. I've seen your work. Maybe there's something you'll be inspired by. And I'm looking at these graphs that are on a time scale that human beings just can't fathom or operate on, particularly today with everything becoming more instant gratification, short-termist, like now, or 5 years or 10 years. But no, not 1,000 years, not these timelines that the planet has been operating on well before we arrived. So I thought, okay, this data is so effing shocking. And it's like being back in the cinema watching an Inconvenient Truth, yet it's 15 years later and we've progressed nothing. If anything, we've exacerbated this emergency. And realizing that that data is so cold for so many people, I wanted to find a way of translating it, revisualizing it into something everyone could see and absorb, setting it to the song that I wrote as a teenager. And so now we're going to just take a little look. It's just the trailer. This installation, this project is actually going to be installed in the Media Lab in its interactive version. But this is just the trailer we're going to take a quick look at.
Outside, the people like cars are still running, when inside it's safe to deny that it's coming. The TV's turned up, so the winds are just humming to the sound of the heat rising. We don't want to hear that the problem is us, so we live like we want in our own universe. 'Cause man thinks he's God in a devilish way. We're too proud to see what we won't even say. We don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. No, we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. So take my hand, babe, and I'll walk you to school, where you'll learn how to live by a new set of rules. 'Cause we played all our cards, there's none left for you. Forgive us, my dear, can't you see? It's the truth that we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. No, we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. What happened to love? Is it out of date? Turn back, there's so much here to say. What happened to love? Is it out of date? Turn back, there's so much here to say. Turn back.
Thank you. So as you can see, that is the 800,000 years of atmospheric CO2 data, rising carbon levels. And reckon you guys are all smart enough to figure out where human beings really started fucking things up. So this is just the trailer, the installation where you can actually move your hands over the digital projection, pull out the carbon ppm, planetary timeline data and date, will be in the Media Lab from tomorrow. And having had the most perfect launch for this project, with all these festivals and awards or whatever, not that I care about any of that stuff, COVID happened. So it's 2020. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it doesn't get shown anywhere, and we all stay here in our homes, and no one travels, and somehow the planet heals. Yes, very just optimistic and naive condensation. And then I got an email, and it was the Nobel Prize organization. They said, look, we'd love you to show this project and talk and perform after Sir David Attenborough and Al Gore. Would you be interested? A bit like the space broadcast, you're not going to say no to that. So I ended up showing this project at the inaugural Nobel Prize Summit. And then COP26 projected it 550 feet across onto the conference center. It was then at the New York Times Climate Hub, London Design Biennale, where you could, again, move your hands over and engage the data. And so it's just had this wonderful impact and continues to be having an impact. So as much as it is about the awareness pieces, and as an artist, I feel a responsibility to use whatever tools I can to communicate things that maybe aren't as easily communicated in other fields, or those expert people don't necessarily have the best communication methods. It's the wonderful thing about art. It's kind of this rogue connector that can build these different bridges. I also feel it's about really being part of the tangible solutions. So I've been working with Microsoft Research on environmental data storage in glass that can be preserved for 10,000 years in this very cold, inert, highly efficient manner. And also working with Brian Eno and Michael Stipe to release the world's first bioplastic record, moving away from the typical PVC materials, which of course are hugely problematic. So that is a bit about me, and thank you all. It's been wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to all the brilliant ideas and innovation and partnerships that can come from the next couple of days. Thanks.